Something is moving inside Germany's ruling party, and it's moving fast. A major German tabloid with deep CDU connections just dropped a story that should be making headlines everywhere. According to their sources, a group of insiders within Friedrich Merz's own party has begun quietly discussing the unthinkable, removing him from power. Not through an election, not through a public challenge, through a no-confidence vote, clean, surgical, and devastating. And what makes this even more remarkable is that Merz himself shows absolutely no sign of wanting to leave. He hasn't lost an election. He hasn't publicly stumbled in any single dramatic moment. And yet the knives are already out. Subscribe to Frontline Pulse right now and hit that bell, because this story is only getting started, and you need to be here when it breaks wide open. To be clear about what we're dealing with here, Bild Zeitung was careful to frame this as mere discussion, not a coup. Just conversations. Just ideas circulating among concerned party members who are worried about the direction of the party. But let's be honest about what that actually means. When people inside your own party start gathering, whispering names of potential replacements, and then briefing the press about it, that is not a casual chat over coffee. That is the opening move of a political assassination. The moment you start floating successor names publicly, you've already crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. And the names being floated are not minor backbench figures. We're talking about Hendrik Wüst, Minister-President of North Rhine-Westphalia, the largest, most populous, and one of the wealthiest states in all of Germany, and currently regarded as the single most popular CDU politician in the entire country. The other name circulating is Michael Kretschmer, Minister-President of Saxony. These are heavyweight political actors with genuine bases of power and real constituencies behind them. Their names don't get attached to rumors by accident. Someone put them there deliberately. What makes this moment historically significant, and this point cannot be overstated, is that nothing quite like this has happened in modern German political history. There is no recent precedent for this kind of internal maneuvering against a sitting chancellor from within his own party. Germany has had political crises before. It has had unpopular leaders before. But this particular dynamic, the quiet mobilization of senior party figures against their own chancellor before any election has even been lost, is something new. And that alone tells you everything about the depth of the crisis surrounding Friedrich Merz right now. His approval ratings are low and falling. His reform agenda has stalled without producing visible results. His coalition feels fragile, and his party is watching the polling numbers with a level of dread that is beginning to override loyalty. The fear circulating in CDU corridors is not just political, it is existential. Because if the CDU drops below 20% support, the conversation stops being about managing a difficult period and starts being about whether the party can survive in its current form at all. At that point, you're not navigating a rough patch. You're watching a historic institution, one that has defined the German center-right for decades, potentially disintegrate in real time. And the prospect of the AfD filling that vacuum, of the far right establishing itself as the dominant force on the right of German politics, is something that sends genuine shockwaves through the CDU establishment. That is the nightmare scenario driving all of this. And it is that fear, more than any personal animosity toward Merz, that is pushing people toward the unthinkable. And there's a shadow hanging over all of this, a very familiar one. Angela Merkel has reemerged. The timing is striking, almost too precise to be coincidental. She surfaced publicly in connection with a proposal to make her the European Union's chief negotiator, and her response was characteristically ambiguous. Yes, no, and maybe, all at once. But she attached a condition to her potential involvement that deserves very careful scrutiny. She said that to serve effectively as chief negotiator, one must hold real authority, genuine power, the kind that actually moves things. Read that statement slowly. That is not the language of someone simply weighing a diplomatic posting. That is the language of someone carefully measuring the political terrain, testing the ground, seeing what is possible. And Merkel is no ordinary political figure when it comes to internal party warfare. She is the person who engineered the political downfall of Helmut Kohl, her own mentor, the man who brought her into national politics. She has done this before. She understands these mechanisms at a cellular level, and she has the patience, the precision, and the instinct to work them without ever leaving visible fingerprints. The fact that she resurfaces at the exact moment these internal CDU discussions begin is not something any serious political observer should dismiss as coincidence. Not when you've watched enough of these situations unfold to recognize the architecture beneath the surface. Now let's think carefully about what Bild Zeitung's decision to publish this story actually means, because it matters enormously. They didn't stumble onto this. Bild is not an outsider to CDU politics. They are deeply embedded within those networks, and their sources are real. If they're reporting this, it is because people inside the CDU wanted it reported. Someone made a deliberate strategic choice to take these internal discussions public. And that decision transforms the entire situation. Publishing the names of potential successors is itself a political act of the first order. It is designed to force movement. It is designed to smoke out Hendrik Wüst specifically, to publicly surface his name, to put pressure on him, to test whether he has the appetite and the ambition to step forward and challenge Merz directly. The publication is not just coverage of the operation. The publication is part of the operation. The coup, and let's be clear, that is the right word for what this is already underway. It is simply being conducted through press briefings and strategic leaks rather than through dramatic backroom confrontations. What remains genuinely unknown at this stage is the scale of what we're seeing. We don't know how many CDU members are actively involved in these discussions. It could be a small, determined cluster of 2 or 3 senior figures trying to generate momentum and pull others along with them. Or it could be a much broader current of discontent, one that has been building quietly for months, that has simply found its voice and its moment. What we do know with certainty is that this energy did not appear from nowhere. Cast your mind back to the moment when Merz was first confirmed as Chancellor. The Bundestag vote to approve him was supposed to be a procedural formality, routine, unremarkable, a matter of going through the motions, and he lost it on the first round. That was unprecedented in modern German history. That was deeply, visibly humiliating. And it almost certainly came from dissenters within his own coalition, his own ranks. The question that now demands an answer is whether those same skeptics have been quietly organizing ever since that embarrassing moment, waiting patiently for the right conditions to move against him. Everything we are seeing now suggests that moment may have finally arrived. So what happens next? If Merz is removed and a new figure, Wüst, Kretschmer, or someone else entirely, steps into the chancellery, what does Germany actually gain from that transition? The honest answer, looking at this situation clearly, is probably a short-term stabilization and very little structural change beyond that. A new face at the top of the government generates energy. It creates a narrative of renewal. The CDU's numbers could realistically recover for a period of several months. The AfD's seemingly unstoppable rise might slow, at least temporarily. Voters who had drifted away out of dissatisfaction with Merz personally might give the new leadership the benefit of the doubt, at least for a while. That political window is real, and it is not nothing. For a party fighting for its survival, even a few months of breathing room has genuine value. But here is the fundamental problem that no change of personality at the top can solve. None of the deep structural issues driving Germany's political and economic crisis would be addressed simply by swapping one chancellor for another. The deindustrialization that has been hollowing out Germany's economic base, the energy policy decisions that have left the country exposed, the accumulated weight of choices made over many years under many governments, none of that disappears because the face behind the desk changes. The CDU, regardless of who leads it, remains a party that has not yet grappled seriously with the underlying reasons for its collapse in public trust. And Merkel, should she find herself once again pulling strings from behind the curtain, which her recent public statements invite us to consider, is the very last person likely to champion the kind of fundamental policy redirection the situation demands. She is the architect of the era that produced many of these problems. Her return, in whatever form it takes, would represent continuity dressed up as renewal. The trajectory then looks something like this. A leadership change provides a brief but real window of political calm. The numbers improve, the mood lifts slightly, and then, as the structural problems reassert themselves, as the promises of the new leadership bump against the same realities that defeated the old one, the slide resumes. And when that happens, the options that are currently considered extreme will begin to feel inevitable. Talk of banning the AfD entirely, which already circulates in certain political and legal circles, will grow louder and more serious. The pressure will build again, only this time with even less political credibility available to absorb it, because the party will have already played its last obvious card. What is unfolding right now inside the CDU is, at its core, an attempt to buy time, to stabilize a deteriorating situation without committing to the fundamental change of course that stabilization actually requires. Whether that gamble pays off and buys the CDU a genuine second chance, or whether it simply delays and ultimately deepens the reckoning that is coming regardless, is the defining question of German politics as we move into this next chapter. Stay with Frontline Pulse, follow us on all platforms, smash that like button to push this video to the people who need to see it, Share it with anyone who wants to understand what is really happening beneath the surface of European politics, and subscribe if you want to be ahead of the story every single time, because this is exactly where the real ones land first.